Dr. Bashir and Chief O'Brien have spent the last week helping two races, the Talani and the Kelleran, dismantle deadly biological weapons known as harvesters. They assured the Talani and Kelleran ambassadors that all files related to the harvesters have been destroyed, so as to prevent them from ever being created again. When the moment comes to destroy the final harvester, two Kelleran soldiers enter the laboratory and begin shooting the scientists, Talani and Kelleran alike. Bashir and O'Brien overpower the soldiers, but a drop of the harvester liquid falls on O'Brien's skin. To escape, they are forced to beam down to the surface of the planet they are orbiting. The ambassadors inform Commander Sisko that O'Brien and Bashir died in an accident and provide a recording purportedly showing the deaths of the entire science team due to an automated security routine. The senior staff of Deep Space Nine grieve the loss of their crewmates, and Sisko informs O'Brien's wife Keiko of his death. Meanwhile, Bashir and O'Brien are stranded in an abandoned town on the planet's surface. O'Brien tries to repair a broken communication system in order to inform the Talani of the Kelleran's apparent betrayal. Bashir discovers that O'Brien has been infected by the harvester, and as O'Brien's condition begins to deteriorate, he is forced to take over the repair effort. Keiko insists that the recording of the supposed accident has been falsified. The video shows O'Brien drinking coffee in the afternoon, something she is certain he would never do. Hang on to that fact. Sisko and Lieutenant Dax travel in a runabout vessel to visit the site of the accident, their air quotes, not mine, where Dax investigates O'Brien and Bashir's runabout and finds evidence that its logs have been altered. The ambassadors show up together at Bashir and O'Brien's hideout. They reveal that the attack on the science team was a joint endeavour meant to erase all knowledge that could potentially be used to make harvesters and prepare to execute Bashir and O'Brien. Sisko and Dax rescue them at the last moment by transporting them to their runabout. The Talani and the Kelleran demand their return and fire upon the runabout when Sisko refuses. But Sisko deceives them by escaping safely in the other runabout. It's like that game, the ball, you've got to follow it under the cups. They failed at this game. As Chief O'Brien recovers from the harvester poisoning back on Deep Space Nine, Keiko is stunned to discover that he does drink coffee in the afternoon. And at the end of a harrowing episode about biological warfare, we end on a joke, which I don't think we've done in Deep Space Nine for a little while. So there we are. And scene, and as we always do in our episodes, we have a quick discussion at the top with initial impressions. We'll then go through it, kind of scene by scene and line by line if necessary. And then we will wrap up at the end when we are too tired to talk anymore and take off. So there it is. Kat, thanks for indulging me for so long. Let's get some initial impressions. What did you think?
I really liked this episode. I think it's very solid. The narrative is very well put together. I think that while it could be I think the Wikipedia summarizer also did a really good job of summarizing it, because there are elements where people are double crossing, people are in one shuttle, are thought to be in another. It could be confusing to watch, and it isn't. They do a really good job of conveying a lot of information, most of it diegetically, most of it within, it's reasonable for someone in this world to be saying this to someone else rather than explaining it to the audience. The sets are really good. It uses a very minimal number of sets. I think we've got 2 original sets in this one, the Talani Lab and the Talani 3 interior, where Bashir and O'Brien hide out. And they're distinctive, they look good. The Talani, not the most Talani and Kelleran aren't the most imaginative looking aliens we've ever seen.
No.
But otherwise, I think it's a really good episode. It drew me in. I was interested by the plot, and I really enjoyed the stupid twist at the end.
We talked about this in the setup, and I'm looking forward to kind of going back and forward over this with Kat and with you in chat as well, because I don't know if I did like the twist at the end or not. But we will cover that when we get through the episode. So I'll fly into mine. My recollection of seeing this, because I did see it when it was broadcast in '94, was it was good, really good, quite tense and suspenseful. And watching it back again just tonight, because I watched it right before, just to keep it fresh in my mind, God, it felt like it was over very quickly. Like, this episode flies. And it reminded me of what we discussed with the alternate, where I was a bit concerned that the episode wasn't fleshed out and there was basically just one plot running through it, and this had the same thing. There was no B plot. Everything was focused on what was happening to Bashir and O'Brien, with only temporary flashes back to the station where Keiko was unravelling the mystery. So I was a bit on the wire about whether or not that was a strength. And I think for this episode, it balances it because there weren't any extraneous sequences that they kind of arbitrarily slotted in to make the plot work, which, anybody who watched us discuss the alternate knows we were not impressed at this decision to go to Planet Leeds for the sole purpose of coming back from Planet Leeds. So I was in two minds about it, but I do feel like this just fell on the right side of not much happens in the episode, but what does make sense, keeps the story moving, and is entertaining. So
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I
I'm on
did
board
enjoy it.
with that.
Hmm. I
And I
always
think this,
want more, I always want more from my characters from my episode. But
if the episodes were any longer than they already were, think how much time
yeah,
we'd
it's a really
spend
good
having
point.
to
Oh God, no, don't
pull
even
them
go there.
apart.
Don't even go there.
But yeah, I think, particularly given that it's an episode where over half of the cast do not know exactly what is going on for some of it.
Mm.
I sometimes experience that tension as being very unpleasant. It can be frustrating when you, the audience, know something and you're
Yes,
watching
that's a
characters
really
act
good point.
without that knowledge.
Mm.
But I think it doesn't play out that way. I think
Mm.
partly because we can be reasonably confident that the two characters are going to be alive by the
Mm-hmm.
end of the episode,
Mm-hmm.
which could have been a weakness of it, but it does remain very tense. And it keeps up
Yeah,
that tension without it becoming a frustrating tension. It is a genuine, how are they going to figure this out? What's going to happen
I think
next?
yes. That is such a good point. Is that the writing should be good enough to make you think, I don't know how they're going to fix this. They
Hmm.
obviously are, but I am so caught up in the mystery of it, which I think they did very well. In that we weren't entirely sure who was doing what and for what reason, which I know they kept until the very end. So I thought that was a very good way of, as you say, keeping us all kind of, both us and the characters, relatively in the dark with regards to the mystery at the heart of this, which I also really appreciated. So it worked for me. It definitely worked for me. It was close, and it could have been, well, this episode was far too bare bones, and it relied too much on that one central issue. But no, they pulled it out of the stocks, and I think a lot of that as well comes down to the fact that I really liked the interactions in this episode. It's just really solid character work in this one. Uh,
Oh gosh, yes. I think all of the characters who get a turn,
mm,
they are really on character. I think this is a really good example
mm,
of an episode
mm,
that feels as if the writer was given some
mm.
insight into the previous
Yes,
episodes.
yes. No, nobody acts unexpectedly. Everybody does more or less what you would expect that person to do in that circumstance. Definitely, and it.
Yeah, definitely. And it feels like they're building on what's already there rather than wildly steering someone off in a new. Bashir's girlfriend aside, that was a little bit weird.
Yes, I am looking forward to your thoughts on that because I
Yeah.
definitely found that whole thing very strange. But yes, very keen to hear what you have to think about that, Cat. So shall we dig in?
And from there we go to the exterior of Deep Space Nine, and then Dax and Kira in ops. And Keiko arrives wanting to see
Mm,
Cisco, and I think Kira very briefly says, "We're really sorry for your loss."
hmm
Um, Keiko then points out to Cisco that Miles drinks coffee in the video, and it's 15:28
hmm
in the
hmm
afternoon.
hmm
Miles never drinks coffee late in the afternoon. It keeps him up all night. At this point, Cisco suggests that this might have been an exception with him working long hours on the project,
hmm hmm
but Keiko's very insistent. I know my husband.
hmm
Kira says, maybe it's tea. But Keiko says that the data clip, the video clip,
Yes.
contained a spectroscopic analysis. So she can tell from the analysis that the liquid in Miles's cup consisted of vegetable-based oils and caffeine.
Caffeine. Definitely
Now, I
coffee.
firstly, I love that this doctored video contains
That's a really
spectrographic
good point.
information about the liquids held within the room. That's stupid and amazing.
Astonishing.
Um, but I genuinely appreciate that Keiko found that out
hmm
herself.
hmm
She
mm.
didn't say, there's something off about this. He's drinking coffee, and have Dax offer, we can do a spectroscopic
Yep.
analysis.
Yep.
She's a botanist. She understands
She
how science
knows.
information works, and
Yes.
she investigates it herself. The script doesn't
Mm-mm.
patronize her.
Mm-mm.
She's the concerned wife, but she's not only a concerned wife, she's a concerned botanist.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
it, yeah, no attention is drawn to that. No one says, wow, Keiko, you're great at this stuff. It's just there, and
mhm.
it's just respectful, and I just really like it, and I wouldn't have expected it
No,
even from Deep Space Nine. I think it's a high point in representing Keiko.
absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely. And just we talked about this a bit in the setup, but I like how seriously Cisco takes her. He asks some kind of corroborating questions like, well, could he be drinking something else? Could it be this? But she's so adamant. He doesn't question it. He's like, okay then, okay then, okay. I think you're onto something. He doesn't say, oh, oh, you've been walked by grief, or it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
he
yeah, he
takes
could have
on
said, "You're
board
clearly in denial at this moment, Keiko. Let's
exactly.
take some
It would
time
have
to
been
think about it." He's
reasonable.
like, "No, time is of the essence. If we're going to find out whether there's something underlying this, we've got to do it now,"
Hmm.
and he does.
I like
And
it.
yeah, I think that is quite a Star Trek stalwart that the crew believe one another when something strange happens.
That was it. That was what I was going for. What was? I always go back to the Beverly Crusher episode, the Warp Bubble one. I always forget the name of it.
Yes,
Remember
where the
me
crew are, yeah, the crew are
disappearing.
disappearing around, and even though they are the crew as represented in her own
Mm,
mind, I think we come to at the
hmm
end,
hmm
they nonetheless believe
They
her,
believe
and they
her.
don't have any particular reason to. It's
No.
most likely that the one person who thinks the world is wrong is themselves incorrect.
Hmm.
But no, they always do. Whenever Guinan says something is off with this, Picard takes it
Yes.
seriously. When Beverly
Yes.
says it, he takes it
Takes
seriously.
it seriously.
Yeah, and I think the fact that in all of these instances, it's a man in power believing a
Being a
woman who
woman.
lacks that power,
Yes. Yes.
and it's that's
That's
why
it.
it feels so damn refreshing, because it doesn't happen often enough even today. Men in positions of power often dismiss women who aren't at the same rank as, and even women who are at the same rank as them, unfortunately. So it's wonderful for a woman who is potentially grieving, who might be
Mm,
mistaken, to bring her issue to the captain, to the commander, and to be
mm,
believed.
hmm
It's, yeah, it's really nice.
That's exactly what I thought, Kat. It was refreshing, and it the only stick in my craw is that we are watching a sci-fi show, which seems to be the only place where we could imagine such a situation taking place in 1994. What a state of affairs we find ourselves in. But this is it. This is why we enjoy this show, because it gives us this wonderful utopian future in which a woman conveys a suspicion to a man, and he believes her and acts on
Yes.
it.
Oh man, what a world to live in.
What a world! So they do.
Cisco then asks, oh, they do, and Cisco asks Dax when she was planning on bringing the Ganges, the shuttle that had been left next to the Kalani vessel, when she was going to bring it back.
Hmm.
And she says she was going to leave tomorrow, but she will now leave right away. And Cisco says that he will go with her.
Brilliant.
So we now cut back to Kalani 3, where Bashir is holding up part of the comms machine, and O'Brien is looking at it and confirms that, yeah, that needs to be cleaned. So throughout this bit of dialogue, Bashir is the scrubbing of this piece
Yes,
of
he
kit,
is.
trying to get the rust off it. And Bashir said, "Don't leave me, Chief. I still need you." And O'Brien
Mm.
said, "I'm not." I think,
Mm.
yeah, it doesn't say that. There's a line later on that I picked up on. But for the moment, O'Brien asks Bashir about the woman that Bashir mentioned earlier. I've skipped that in my notes, but Bashir had talked about a woman who,
Oh
when he'd been in
yes,
love,
that was
and it
earlier.
hadn't worked out, not quite, close. And at this point, O'Brien does that impression of Bashir saying, "Not quite, close."
Brilliant.
Which we know that Colmini can do, because he did it a couple of episodes ago. He can do a really good
Really
impression of a
good.
posh Englishman.
It's brilliant. It's such a weird thing. I don't think Star Trek does that often, of impersonating like comically another character's voice. But the way Colmini
I
does
think it
it's
would be
brilliant.
it would be disrespectful if the two characters were from greatly divergent cultures. You wouldn't
Agreed.
have someone
Agreed.
imitating Marina Sirtis's accent as
No.
Deanna. That would be disrespectful. But for an Irishman to mock a posh English accent, that's always going to be okay in every possible situation. So they
Especially
run with
now.
that. I love it. And Bashir says that she was called Palais de Long, a French ballerina, and they were crazy about one another. And Bashir then goes and clicks the piece back into the machine, and there's some clicking noises as it goes in. We can't actually see it being entered. I think he probably just puts it down on a desk. We never get to see the comms machine he's working on, but we see some green lights shining off him after he's inserted it. And he then speaks further about what happened between him and Palais. And Palais's father, the chief administrator for a medical complex in Paris, had offered Julian a job. He would have been chief surgeon within 5 years. But Julian had just graduated from Starfleet, and he wanted a Starfleet career. So he had to turn down that job. He turned down moving to Paris. Palais was a ballerina, so she presumably wanted to stay on Earth where the work was. So he ended that aspect of his life so as to keep his career. At this point, O'Brien has lost the feeling in his legs, and we fade to black. But I also like that in this scene, he says that he sometimes wakes in the night wondering whether he'll find someone that wonderful again, which is the first hint we've had that there's a world outside of Dax for him. That he hasn't put Dax on such a pedestal that he cannot see beyond her. There was someone that he loved more than he currently feels for Dax.
It is refreshing, although I did also find it a little bit, when will my fair maiden come?
And it's a little bit, she gets mentioned in this episode and will never appear again, according to Memory Alpha.
Of course she won't.
It's
Star
hugely
Trek.
important part of his emotional development, and it effectively, if you don't watch this episode, it never happened.
Bingo.
I still really enjoyed the episode. I think I often say it about Deep Space Nine episodes, but nuts and bolts wise, it held together really well. It kept my attention.
Yes.
It wasn't confusing in terms of who. It was a little confusing in terms of who was Talani and who was Kelleran, and in terms of which shuttle was which was deliberate misdirection. But otherwise, it was an easy plot to follow, despite being very technical in places, despite involving science and involving lots of different people. It had a lot of good character work and drama. As I've said, it looks really good and it's directed really well. I think, yeah, I don't feel it's just a kind of run-of-the-mill episode. I think it was genuinely very well done, and I really enjoyed watching it. Yeah.
Yeah. I also came away with much of the same. It's a good, what I would consider a standard Star Trek episode. You know, it's peril. Two characters are cut off and have to survive. You know, I think there's a new Strange New Worlds episode that's just come out with, I think, Ortega stranded somewhere with a Gorn,
Oh,
which is
yes.
itself a retread of that episode where Geordie's stranded on Galandorn Core with a Romulan.
I mean,
Which
it's a retread of the episode where Kirk is abandoned on a planet with a gun by people.
yes, so this is
It's
it.
just
It's
there's no spoilers intended, guys. If you haven't watched Strange New Worlds yet, plug your ears. But it's just a rerun of that episode. It's just the same episode done again, and no, just lazy. No, stop it. Sorry.
I'm only a couple of episodes into the new season of Strange New Worlds, and I'm still kind of finding my feet with it because I like Strange New Worlds. It's one of my favorite of the new Treks, but yeah, I don't know. Some bits of it I really have a problem with, but this is not the show to discuss that. In 10 or 12 years' time, when we've finished the Deep Space Nine rewatch, we can look at Strange New Worlds if you want. So yes, it's a good Star Trek episode. You know, I think the merits of it are some really interesting concepts, deep concepts it explores about relationships and Starfleet and world-ending weapons and things like that. And there's some great character work in it from the very deep-voiced Kelleran ambassador, who was not Leslie Nielsen but really could have been, to the start of what is one of my favourite relationships in Star Trek, which is between Bashir and O'Brien. That to me is the great merit of it. Definitely the great merit of it, and it's strange because there are other episodes in Deep Space Nine where they've tried to limit the plot to maximise the character interaction, like you know, the alternate, where it tried to be an Odo exploration story, but it just didn't come off as well. This landed really well for me, even if I had some plot sniffles. But ultimately, yeah,
Yeah.
I loved it. I came away just very satisfied with what it gave me. So, kudos,
Yeah.
all involved.
And I think that ultimately, despite both of us being a bit trepidatious about the boomerish wife bad, you're married, you can't have adventures anymore ness of it, I think that ultimately it did a really good job of respecting Keiko while being about
Yes.
her husband being elsewhere and her missing him. I think it would have been very easy to have got that wrong in various different ways, and it didn't. I feel that it understood and respected every character in it, which, yeah, exemplary, while leaning on information about them from previous episodes. Really nicely done.
You get the feeling that the creators and the writers and the producers are just starting to learn that, oh, actually, it turns out these Star Trek fans are a really obsessive lot and really are following everything and writing
You know
it
what they'd
down.
love? If you had something that was already in an episode a little while ago, they'll love that.
And
Just
then we
throw
got
in a line.
Lower Decks, which is just one massive reference back to everything you've ever seen in Star Trek, including some really shonky merch off knockoffs. Brilliant. 10 out of 10. That's how you should do Star Trek. Lashings of references. Awesome. Well, there we are. Let's move ourselves to an ending so that we can save some energy for next time. I
Absolutely.
want to thank Kat, as always, for joining me on this journey. Their experience of Deep Space Nine new is refreshing to me, like an infusion of fresh blood into a tired, withered old corpse. Thank you so much, Kat.
Oh, it's a delightful image. Thanks, Tim.
Anytime. I'm going to thank chat for everyone who engaged with us, and I see so many familiar faces: David, Sarah, the indoor cat, part of our own backroom staff, Willow Gnome. Thank you all so much for joining us. It is much appreciated. As I said to Kat during setup, season 2 from here on out has some of the best episodes in Star Trek. I know I'm not supposed to be spoiling. I'm just saying I cannot wait to get on to some of the episodes that take us to the end of season 2, which we are now halfway through. And towards the end of this, to me, it just gets better and better and better. I can't wait to get there with Kat and with all of you. So please do keep following us, keep commenting, chatting, and we hope to see you all again in a couple of weeks' time. Kat, any final thoughts?
I'm so excited to see more episodes. I think it's still a little while before we get a Garak one, maybe, but yeah. I think the next episode is episode 14 of season 2, Whispers, which I know nothing about. So I look forward to finding out what that's about.
No spoilers. We will see you back here for Whispers in hopefully a couple of weeks' time. And without further ado, I will wish you all a lifelong and prosper. Good night, farewell.